Hello, everyone. I'm joined today by Lisa, and we're at this beautiful treehouse-like cafe in Chiang Mai, and feeling really grateful to continue this journey on the untethered path theme. So I met Lisa in Chiang Mai at a last-minute event I found online. It was the Tao of Pooh.
Yes.
Which is a book I've been wanting to read for a while. I just finished reading Tao Te Ching, and this caught my eye, and really enjoyed hearing about her story and seeing, just getting another perspective. So we met here today and wanted to kind of dive into more of the details. So I know you've been traveling for a while. You were in India before this, and you're in Thailand. I guess tell me more about how it's been this time around and what you've been focusing on.
Well, my theme of this current journey has been pretty much connecting with others. And I don't know if you've heard of the program SERVAS, SERVAS, but SERVAS was established after World War II. And it was a way of having people come together with the theme of peace. So it's kind of like couch surfing with a peaceful purpose behind it. And so I signed up with that a year ago in August before I left the States. And I decided I wanted to go, and what they do is they give you a list of people who want to host you. And it's a way of sharing cultures. And so I would go stay in homes of people that were on the list that had opened their place up to travelers like myself. And I would cook for them, they would cook for me, and I would stay anywhere
nice
from
cultural exchange.
Yeah, 3 to 4 days, and we arranged this like anywhere from a month to a week beforehand. And so I began my journey going to Denmark in Copenhagen, and then I came down through Germany on the train, and I stayed with 3 different German families and couples. Actually, the kids were gone by then, and it was a wonderful opportunity to connect with people on a very deep level, and they would be very proud of showing me their village that they lived in. I went off the beaten path. I avoided cities.
Sounds like it. Yeah, I stayed away from kind of like the touristy stuff. And
yeah.
So you said it's called SERVAS?
Yes, all capitals. It represents, it's an acronym for something, but it's, as I said, it's like couch surfing with a peaceful mission.
Gotcha.
So
you basically have to apply for this?
You have to be interviewed before you leave your country.
Okay.
And you're interviewed by another service member, and you pay a small fee just to help the organization.
Yep.
And then they email you lists according to which countries you want to go to.
Of people that can host you.
Yes. And so then I just contacted them, and I had to show them the letter that SERVAS gave me. It's an official seal, so they know I'm not just some crazy showing up at their door. And so I show them my letter, and then we would talk on the phone, and we emailed back and forth a few times too to make sure that we had something in common. And I had great experiences going down through Germany, and and then I went down into Italy, and anyway, I don't know if you want to tell more on SERVAS, but it's a wonderful organization that has been hurt by the pandemic. They've kind of had to reorganize since not a lot of people are traveling right now.
I bet. Yes. It's inspiring to hear how many of these different types of organizations there are in the world. And what I like about this is it makes this a lot more accessible for people, especially at the beginning when you're starting to travel. And even after you've been traveling for a while, yourself, like it's still nice to have this kind of like theme or this setup.
Definitely.
But I think for a lot of people out there, just getting started with traveling can be very intimidating.
And people think that you have to be a millionaire or something. I try and tell people, no, you just have to have that desire or passion that you want to do this. And you can travel in such simple ways. And I've met people who invited me into their homes, and just I realized how much the universe kind of aligned everything perfectly for me, and even the challenging times were gifts in disguise, because through experiencing the contrast of what I didn't want, I had really clear ideas of what I wanted to do after that.
Absolutely, yeah. This this idea that like we learn a lot more from our failures and like the periods of our life that are challenging really rings true for me. And
Yeah.
you get that with traveling.
You do.
You know, there's these bright spots, but there's also like plenty of challenging spots where you're just like, I
yeah.
just want to go home right now.
Yeah.
Why am I doing
Exactly.
this?
And so you guys have been more travelers than tourists as well. So I know that you probably have wanted to avoid a lot of big touristy areas.
Yes.
Yeah.
I started traveling in college, and really like it helped broaden my horizon quite a bit. I studied abroad in Madrid for a semester, and I studied abroad in Brazil. And I refer to those as like planting the seeds of traveling in my life. That then, 10 years later, kind of like went into full blossom, and I was like, all right, like I want to take a break. I want to go see what else is out there. I want to start doing this. And yeah, our path has been very much like moving away from touristy things
Yes.
into this, theme, if you will. If I had to put a label on it, it's like more like slow traveling or like very integrative traveling, where we want to get to know locals. We want to see what it's like to live in those communities. We want to give back to those communities in ways that we can, and really get an idea of like what life there is like.
Right.
Has it been similar for? It sounds like it's been similar for you along the way.
It has been, and I'm really grateful that right out of college I joined the Peace Corps, and that was kind of like a baseline for me on not only how hard it can be to travel on your own, but that learning the language, connecting with locals, and living as simply as possible were all lessons that Peace Corps gave me.
Yeah.
So when I was on a little tiny island out in the middle of the Pacific by myself, I got a lot of survival skills on how to appreciate when food's there, because it's not always there.
Not always there.
And how to learn to lighten up and laugh at ourselves, because I think people can take life so seriously. And I found out later that the Marshallese people on the islands that I was on, they call Peace Corps volunteers cheap entertainment. We were like cheap entertainment for the locals because we would do such stupid things. And so that was a lesson to me right off of don't be worried about making a fool of myself, and be able to laugh and let other people laugh with me and at me. That's what happens when you travel. You don't always do things right.
That humility is super important. And you have kind of a convenient excuse because you're outside of, you're in this new environment. You have an excuse to kind of make a fool. You have like an excuse to make a fool of yourself and to try new things like that.
Right.
I think that's super important.
Yeah.
How has it been keeping in touch with family and like loved ones and friends back home as you've gone on these like long trips for you?
We have a radio announcement coming by.
Speaking of local culture,
you get to hear Thai. I would say that it's been so much easier than it was back in my Peace Corps days when we only had a radio to talk every 2 weeks. And one challenge has been, especially with the pandemic, I had planned to come home for a visit by now, and so it's been a year and about 15 months since I've been home. And in that time, my mother passed away in this last August, and unfortunately I had to say goodbye via FaceTime. And that was one of the most difficult things I had to do, because even if I was there, I couldn't have held her hand and talked to her because she was in a nursing home and they wouldn't let us in.
COVID,
And so that's not the way that I envisioned saying goodbye to my mother in particular. But I just know that as long as I do keep in touch via social media, and the technology we have today is it's so much
easier,
better than it was, when I first started traveling. So yeah, it's not been that difficult. How about for you? Have you had challenges with leaving your loved ones behind?
I think we've been quite fortunate that our families and friends are very supportive, and in some sense, at least some of them are like maybe like living vicariously through us and following along. I think the challenge has just been the time zones, honestly, and even that you kind of get used to.
Right.
But it's definitely more challenging than like going to Europe because the time difference is bigger. Because other than that, like you mentioned, with all the tools that we have at our disposal, it's so easy to just pick up the phone and or pick up like phone or laptop and video chat with someone. And the connections have gotten a lot better too.
Mhm.
I remember even like when I was in Madrid in college, the cell phones were super expensive. Like we had to pay per text message, and it was just like, it was very burdensome.
Yeah.
And there was, Skype worked once in a while. And just thinking like in the last 10 years in my life, like what the difference has been like.
Mhm.
The world's a lot more connected. I'm
Mhm.
imagining what it was like to travel, like, even before that, where you were completely going away from home. And it's like you might have a letter or a postcard or an expensive long distance phone call.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. And when I was in Bali 9 years ago, I've been a traveler for quite a while now, but in Bali 9 years ago, I was at a spot where I didn't get reception, and I was down at this ravine in a rice field, and I had unfortunately had a little incident with the spider where I was jumping back to get away from it. It was one of these big bird-eating spiders, and I didn't want to be also on the menu of the spider. So when it was coming at me, I jumped back and I ended up falling and hitting my head and my hip.
Oh man.
And because I couldn't get Wi-Fi reception, I ended up calling my sister, who's a nurse, on regular telephone lines, because that's the only way I could get through. I took it off airplane mode, and I just called to get advice on whether I was going to die, and if I did die, at least she would know what happened, since it was late at night when I had fallen. And so yes, I appreciate how Wi-Fi is much more prevalent in all the places that I am now versus even when this happened 9 years ago, more isolated in pockets. So
Yep.
yeah, travel has been made easier, but with the pandemic now too, having to really slow down and not, like you said, slow travel, not go as many places. And I'm grateful to be here for many reasons in one place for a while, for also the carbon footprint that I'm
Yep.
trying to avoid, and that's why I walk places, and I take trains when I can, and it's hard to swim with a giant suitcase across out to islands. But how about you guys? How has travel been for you?
I'm imagining a contraption. There's probably a market for a contraption where you can it's like a waterproof thing on your bag or on your back, where you can it somehow keeps you afloat and you can travel with this.
It's those big bubble dome tubes that people
Yeah.
get in and crawl around in, and I just need to keep me upright.
We wanted to slow down anyway. Like COVID, we've been so lucky at so many different points in this. Like the fact that when we left in late December was probably the latest we could have left before we would have decided not to even start, especially in Asia. And then by the time that things started getting locked down in Asia, which was about March, April, we were already basically wanting to settle down more in a place. Because we had heard from talking to other people, after about 2 or 3 months of moving around, and even if you're not moving around like that quickly, it starts to feel more, it starts to take more of a toll, right? Because it's just too many new things. We weren't appreciating it quite as much, and we were yearning for more consistency.
Yeah.
I don't always want to figure out where I can go to get water and my ATM,
Right.
and the grocery store and stuff. And we wanted to make longer term friendships. So by the time lockdown happened and we decided to settle on this island, Koh Lanta, we were already wanting to do this. So it honestly worked out super well.
So right after lockdown, I don't know how it was in Koh Lanta, but there was a lot of fear on Koh Phangan where I was, where people were worried about the boats coming to give us food. And I don't know if you had some of that same fear percolating through the island, like you might starve to death and have to become a cannibal and all that. Those were some of the issues we were joking about.
It was turning into Survivor,
yeah,
huh?
Exactly. We're thinking, okay, who can I eat around here, and instead of where can I eat? So anyway, how was it in Koh Lanta?
Koh Lanta was an experience. So they had some cases early on. It was one of the relative hotspots. So they had shut it down. The lockdown, from what I heard, was more severe than in Koh Phangan.
Yes, Koh Phangan only had one case.
Yes. So we we pretty quickly like were locked down. They had sectioned off parts of the island like with checkpoints, so you couldn't go further. And then at one point, they didn't allow tourists to ride scooters.
Oh, wow.
So we were kind of like limited to our little section, which honestly was, I mean, obviously that was a toll, and we were kind of wondering a lot of the same things, like what's next and how much more strict this is going to get. But it was also very understandable, and again, it kind of like worked out for the better because it led to this more simple, straightforward way of life. You know, like we had our guest house that we were staying in, we had our beach, and then we had the grocery store, and that's all like we really needed.
Yeah. No, that works. You realize how important 7-Eleven is too when you live out here. It's like I'm sure you had your little
the oasis of 7-Elevens around everywhere. Yeah.
You can get your phone and Magnum ice cream bars, and what else did I need? Coffee. The basics.
There you go.
So yeah.
Yeah, they cover everything. Yeah, Koh Phangan, it sounds like, was the place to be. It sounds like they didn't have that much of a lockdown.
No.
There was a bigger community there. Koh Lanta was definitely smaller. It was more intimate.
Did you have people pulling together and sharing
Absolutely.
foods?
Absolutely. Yeah, we were quite fortunate. We were able to start kind of this like little community.
Oh, great.
Like 15, 20 people from like different parts of the world and different walks of life.
Yeah.
And people really came together because we didn't know how long we were going to be there.
Yeah.
There's this like, I think there's this like human yearning for like family and tribe, especially during these like trying times. People were like, some people were actually stuck. Some people were not stuck, but they didn't want to leave.
Right. Yeah.
So there's all these questions, and yeah, we really came together, and it was really special. We already have our like little Facebook group for the Koh Lanta alum, like COVID alum group.
Yeah. I know it was special. It did bring us together too, where I was, where we quickly bonded because there were no new people coming in, and I was staying at this little place that, we all would check in with each other every night, and especially when they had the curfew, where we had to be back in our rooms by, 10 was the latest, or the earliest, I think. Anyway, it wasn't that bad.
Started at 10.
I'm in by 10 usually anyway, so.
Yeah, again, it kind of worked out for the better. Yeah. We're from San Francisco, so we didn't go out that much. We were kind of happy to like.
It was always quiet.
Be healthy and go in early, and then be able to get up in the morning and like catch sunrise.
Oh yes, sunrise.
Especially on the islands, you know. Oh.
Yeah, they were definitely the best.
I'd say we were quite fortunate and privileged to spend lockdown where we did, and then have it open up so quickly afterwards.
It was a definite blessing in disguise to be able to be there and just have all these people. I saw many people choosing between fear and trust in life on numerous occasions throughout that whole 6-month time period, because some people would panic and they didn't really want to go home, but they got into that panic mode, so they would leave, and then other people settled back into, I'm just going to trust and see what happens. And I think the whole world is kind of in that place now a bit of having to trust, because we don't know what the outcomes are going to be. We don't know what the next, especially with many countries around the world right now, all kind of changing their governments and being up in the air. There's no real certainty there.
Yeah. I've definitely been thinking about that stuff, and I agree with you. It's a time of flux, and we've had so many of these periods in human history, but we haven't really had one to this extent for a while, in our lifetimes. Like, so it's a trying time, but I try to look optimistically at it. I think that, like you said, more people are like realizing that maybe this sense of security that they thought they had was more of an illusion for many different reasons. And I think COVID kind of like cemented that. And it's like, how, like you were saying, how do you switch to letting go of some of these attachments and being more in the moment while still, finding purpose in life and being happy and not letting fear get to you.
Right. And one thing that I've been trying to do on my whole journey and in the last few years of my life is also to live unconditionally, which means my happiness is not dependent on the conditions out
Yes.
there. And so I can take a look and know that I have a choice. I think Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there's a space.
Yep.
And there's a place to choose how we want to react.
Yes.
And I don't want to just react all the time at things that are going on, as bad as the news seems to make it. Like,
Yes.
oh, this event happened, it's horrible. But to know that there's something beyond that will be revealed. And so I've been trying to be peaceful regardless of whatever happens in my life. And on Copenhagen, right after the lockdown, I broke my toe. I tripped on a cement block because I was not being mindful. And I was even more stuck. I had to slow down. I only could hobble just to get food, and I had to have water delivered to me for a while.
Oh man.
And so, but it taught me that, okay, now I have more of an opportunity to write. I can read more, and I can do other things that if I had been running around on the beach, like I would do walks on the beach all the time, I realized that there was a gift in the broken toe.
Yep.
To breathe, slow down even more, and work on some things that I had come to do.
Yeah, I really like this idea that you're bringing up of we can't control so many of the things around us, right? But what we can control is our reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it starts with that theory, right? And you hear that theory in so many different places in your life and different systems, but moving to a point where you're internalizing that more and more at different points throughout the day.
Right.
Like that to me, I think is one of the objectives I try to focus on with meditation. It's like, it's trying to be able to, like, when I have my frustrated moments throughout the day, that's when I need the awareness to see myself doing that and be like, why am I choosing to go along with this?
Right. Yeah, you almost feel like you're being a victim of your own thoughts or the conditions of the world. It's like things will always change, but what we have control over is our peace of mind or our state of mind, and to learn, through the tool of meditation on how to breathe through things and just notice the thoughts going by, like the beautiful clouds in the sky right now.
Yep.
And not give them a whole lot of weight.
And to your point, it's like I stubbed my toe, or did you break your?
I broke it.
You broke it.
I
even
actually
worse.
went in for X-rays and.
It's like I broke it. That's done. I can't undo that. That's what I have, and I can choose to focus on that, or I can choose to just make the most of it.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, you get to that state anyway, as a human, right? They're like these happiness studies of people that like won the lottery or like became paraplegics. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, I have. Were they?
Yeah, after a certain amount of time, like their happiness like normalizes to what it was before, kind of independently of like what horrific or amazing thing happens to you in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like this just speaks to it. It's like it's all in our heads.
And that's what being unconditional or non-conditional is about. Your happiness is not dependent on the conditions in your life, because those will always change. And there's I think it's a Zen saying it says, "Barns burned down, now I can see the moon." And I love that one because it's looking for the gift, the little miracle and events that you would deem tragic or horrible, but to wait, give it time. It's like, if you look up close at a tapestry, it doesn't make sense. You just see a mangled mess of threads, and you wonder why colors are put in those particular patterns. But until you step back and see that the tapestry really makes this beautiful picture, and then you can appreciate it more. So I see when we look at our little conditional events and react, we're looking way too close to the tapestry.
Yep. We have such a limited view.
Yeah. There's a whole lot more going on in the long run.
Yeah, there's so many metaphors for this. There's the one of the three men that are people that are touching different parts of an elephant.
The blind men.
The blind men, yeah. And it's like, oh, this is the elephant's, one's like feeling the trunk.
Right.
one's feeling like the hind, it's like the skin. So yeah, there's so many different metaphors for this, and
people can all be right as long as we don't try and make other people right with our perspective. And that's been a challenge too, is to step back and not be judgmental of how somebody else is perceiving the world, and to allow them to have their own experience, whatever drama they want to go through, and to just not getting involved in it or caught up in it. But,
and like you were mentioning before, part of this idea of like living unconditionally is also accepting people unconditionally. So first it's like not letting them like have power over you or impact like us and our feelings, right? But then I feel like next level, in a sense, at least for me, has been like, how do I meet people where they are? How do I accept them where they are?
Right.
And how do I catch that judgment in myself? Because whenever I have a problem with someone, it's my fault. It's always my fault.
For the way you're perceiving
For the way I'm perceiving it. Exactly. Yeah, like what their side of it is their side of it, but what I can control is how I perceive it.
Yeah. No,
that's been really powerful.
Especially as travelers, where we are truly immersed in so many other cultures. So what's considered good or bad in one culture is not necessarily in another. And so having to really step back and say, wow, this works for them, and to pull the judgment out of it. And I know when I was in India, there were things that I really struggled to not be judgmental about.
Oh, I bet, in India especially.
Yeah, it really pushed some buttons, especially in terms of how women were treated, and to try and think then, okay, well, what's the human rights issue here, and what's my own judgment about things. And then after going, as I said, to lots of different countries in the last year and a half, to see that there's a place that we all connect ultimately. And so despite things on the fringe that I don't like about other cultures or people's lives, I know if I focus on what I do like, that we can connect on, to me that's what is really the only thing that matters, is trying to find that connection.
Yeah, the common ground.
Right.
The common ground and like the good in people.
Exactly. And I've seen far more good than negativity in people on my journey. I mean, it's amazing how loving most people are and kind they are, and sometimes just smiling at them when I feel like maybe they have a judgment about Westerners and they're reacting in fear. But when they know I'm trying to understand them and I'm going out of my way to communicate.
Yeah.
On my way here today, my Songtao driver, the taxi driver, and I, we had like each one word that we could say in the other's language, and it was like a charade game, and we were laughing, and actually this one Songtao driver too, we were laughing because I got him lost, and we could all relate to when he said, "Oh, COVID brain." We just started laughing because we realized, oh yeah, we have that. All COVID brain right now is slowing down and being confused. And so anyway, it was a special moment.
COVID brain is real, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, but in that respect, it was just so funny because he wanted to call me a crazy American, I'm sure. But COVID brain was a gentler way of wording it.
Absolutely.
So anyway, how about you? Have you been noticing too that there are far more good in people than
absolutely
bad, if you want to get it?
Absolutely. And I think for me, just like taking a step back, like seeing myself wanting to attach good and bad.
Right.
Seeing my attachment to doing that. Because then this just goes back to school, right? Like you have to get good grades. You have to be successful. Like this is good, this is not good.
Right.
It's like it's part of our conditioning from the very beginning in so many of these cultures. And we go back to like Taoism, right? This idea of like not contending or like not trying to kind of like label. One of the interpretations I have of not contending is not trying to like label something as like good or bad.
Right.
But going back to the tapestry piece, realizing like we're on one page of this book of the universe or whatever, our lives or whatever you want to call it. And it's like we don't know the rest.
Right.
So why would you try to like get to a conclusion?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah. But I mean, like with that said, again, the theory. I think I'm like more ahead on the theory side, like with my mind.
Yeah.
For me, the challenge is like putting it into practice, and I like surrounding myself by people that challenge me, both in the fact that like they're different from me, and they do things that I catch myself wanting to label or judge. I think that's been really helpful for me. And also people that like constructively point things out to me. I think that could be a really powerful tool for awareness as well.
That's how you grow, is when somebody has the kindness, but to maybe suggest something in a different way, to communicate or whatever it may be. But yeah, to be open-minded to learn from it. I think that's key.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're great at asking these questions too.
Thank you. I'm hoping the battery's not
No, we're
die,
good.
so I keep on looking over there.
We're good on the battery.
Okay, good.
We've got plenty left because I turned everything else off.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
And I'm learning as I go. I occasionally tap the trackpad because the screen wants to turn off after a while.
Yes.
But you don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
This is this beautiful process of figuring all this out. We've got
yes.
some built-in background music,
yeah.
which
might not have selected, but it's here. We're going to make the most of it.
Which was insisted upon by the universe today.
Yeah.
We'll call it that, right?
Yes.
It is what it is.
So where do you see your next chapter of this travel?
That was my next question for you too. So we're very much on the same page. We have lots of different options we're thinking about, but we're trying to find this balance between like, again, planning and being organized and thinking ahead, but also like wanting to practice living more in the moment and not trying to spend too much time in the future thinking, because especially these days, like we don't know what's going to happen. Right. We're in this amazing spot right now where like we can stay in Thailand longer, and we're able to help with the economy here and like really make the most of the situation here. So I think there's a pull to kind of stay here. If not, our fallback plan has been to go to Mexico or somewhere in Latin America or South America. I learned Spanish for many years, and it's also like in the same time zone as the U.S.
Yeah.
We can fly back and forth to see family occasionally, again, carefully and selectively. So that's kind of been like our fallback. We would like to keep traveling, but at this point, it doesn't look like the borders are going to open up for a while.
Right.
So we'll see how long we can stick it out.
Yeah.
What have your thoughts been, or how are you thinking about your next chapter?
Well, like you, there is the whole idea of trying to live in the present moment and be at peace with what happens. I'm a big believer in following my intuition and that guide that says do this. And like I shared with you earlier, I was told inside my in like an internal message to leave India 2 months earlier than I had initially planned on doing. And because of that, I was able to get to Thailand and be locked down in Thailand, which was much better for my life than in India. And so really trusting those inner nudges. And I want to stay in Thailand if I can. I'm also a minister through Centers for Spiritual Living, which is an international organization. And I've been trying to do some things here, just offering little workshops and things to, like the Tao of Pooh, to provide an alternative spiritual teaching for people who might not have heard about it. And it's a very inclusive philosophy. And so right now I want to stay here as long as I can to make that happen. But because of the smoky season in Chiang Mai, which is really bad, from February till about May, I want to go down to another island or another part of Thailand to experience that. So I'll kind of play that by ear as well. And I miss my family and loved ones and lots of friends. And so I'm kind of just waiting to see what that inner guidance tells me to do. I think we all have our own, I call it the internal GPS that dictates the next step to take. And so I'm paying attention to when that will kick in and say, do this. So we'll see. But overall, I just want to be grateful for it all, because I know we are so fortunate to be where we are right now, with limited COVID numbers here in Thailand and more of a peaceful place to be. And so having that attitude of gratitude is really key for me. And
attitude of gratitude. I like that.
So the other night I had a dream of just being thankful for everything that comes into my life. And so I had this dream of a tidal wave coming my way, and in it was a big truck. And it wasn't scary. It wasn't like it was going to hurt me. But when the truck landed, I thought, oh, what's this truck doing here? It was like a big tow truck or something. I was like, oh, there's a gift in it. You know, what will the tires help me create? Or what can I do with this part of the truck? And so it was like, despite the confusing gifts that we are given sometimes in life, I've never wanted a big tow truck, especially through a tidal wave. But in my dream, I was trying to figure out, oh, there's a gift in it somewhere. And so I kind of want to have that throughout the next few months too.
This is a great outlook to have with like what life presents you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like not running away from the tidal wave with the tow truck, but being like, what are you here to what are you here to teach me?
I know, it's like in slow motion coming down, like, okay, it's gonna sit right there.
What could the lesson from this be?
I know. I'm definitely not gonna be fearful about it. I'm gonna go get a place on the beach and just trust that if that's the way I'm gonna go by it.
You'll get your next thing.
Yeah.
I like this idea that it's like the answer is always right in front of us, but we are so distracted. Mm-hmm. Or we're just not, like, often not looking right in front of us.
Right. That was part of the Tao of Pooh from the other night, too. I don't know if you remember, but he said, we don't see things that are right in front of us because we're so busy looking at all the distractions around. And so to be in that state of just mindful of what's right here that I need to do, and not looking too far in the future or the past.
Yep.
But right
Super
in
important.
this moment.
Let's switch gears if you don't mind. I'm curious to hear more about the philosophy of the organization that you're a minister with.
Okay.
How do you mind walking me through, like, the approach, or what?
You mean of the teaching?
The teaching, and also like maybe like what led you to that.
Okay. Well, first of all, the teachings. If you like people like Ram Dass, Deepak Chopra, Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, we're finding a lot of science is backing up spirituality these days. And so this teaching used to be called religious science back 10 years ago. But so many people were confusing it with like Scientology or something. So we changed the name to Centers for Spiritual Living, which still it's based on, there's the basic tenet is there's a power for good in the universe and we can use it. And our thoughts affect our material life by what we focus on and what we give our attention to. There's energy in that, and we can actually direct the course of our life by our beliefs and attitudes about it. And so I was always drawn to this, especially when my dad, my mom used to drag me to church, a Christian church, a lot when I was growing up, and I vowed I did not want to go back into church after those experiences. But my dad took me to this religious science church back when I was a teenager, and it gave me all these practical tools on life, and it's made up of...
It clicked with you, sounds like.
Eastern philosophy. So it
sounds like quite integrative.
Yes, and it's very inclusive because we believe in truths of all religions. And so I can go and talk to an imam at the mosque and share that we have connections, that we have similar beliefs of how we want to treat people, and then also go to a synagogue. And I have friends from all over the world of all religions, and that's what I love about this teaching is it's once again finding the truth and the commonality in all people.
Yeah, going back to that theme earlier, right? It's like these organizations and these philosophies can help magnify that kind of theory, right? Or help us apply it and give us these communities to practice it with.
Right. That there are actual concrete things we can do. We're
Yeah.
not just worshiping for the sake of worshiping. It's what can we do that is a useful tool to help us move through life in a conscious way. And so that's what I've gotten from this teaching, and I love being on a deeper level with it now, because, and one benefit of being caught up in the COVID world is I've been able to attend conferences that are now all online. And before I would have had to fly back to them, and now I just have to be on Zoom, and I've been doing workshops on Zoom, and so in a way I feel like the whole universe has reorganized itself to meet my needs right now as a traveler. And we're having a conference in February, and I'll be speaking via Zoom on that. And so I'm just grateful for the opportunities that the cyber world has presented in allowing us to not just communicate, but to continue learning and growing. And I'm sure you've been on a lot of spiritual sites on your own, or teachings that you've been able to learn more from just studying what's presented out there on YouTube and Zoom.
Absolutely, yeah. There's so many resources online, and like you're saying, I think there's definitely this push where more and more organizations and of all different sorts are putting more of this stuff online, and they're making it more accessible. So I don't know. I'm somewhat conflicted. I don't think there's a substitute for in-person interactions, which is why I really value time like this. But I think there is a lot of value, and there is something to be said about these virtual meetups and connecting with people from all over the world. So I think that's incredibly important. So I think, like everything in life for me, it's a balance, right?
Exactly.
I think I would be very unhappy if I was just working on Zoom all day. But at the same time, like, there's so many things around the world that I'm so happy that I can now be part of.
Yes, exactly. There is that balance, and I too prefer the human contact, the meeting in person, and that has been frustrating because still hearing the stories of some of my congregants back in California, where I'm from, I know that I just want to be there and hug them through challenging times. I've lost 2 congregants to COVID, and wanting to hold their hand and help get them through some of the difficult things that the world...
That presence,
Right. And so it's counterintuitive to not be able to be there and hug them. And so I know that, like you said, it's all about balance. This too shall pass, and we'll get back to that balance where we can have more human interaction. I'm grateful that in Thailand we can sit close without having masks and plexiglass between us, because it is not much of an issue here.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, we've been quite for. I know we keep saying this. I think there is definitely, I think there's a phenomenon. My friend called this out of, like, traveler's guilt.
Yes.
Which is a thing even before COVID.
Right.
Right? Where you're away from home, you're enjoying yourself. A lot of the times, like, you're not working quite as much. And so seeing that effect be amplified, at least for myself, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but
it's there for me too.
It's been quite challenging, It's especially, like, with things like this. Like, I want to share with people, and there's definitely there was a huge obstacle in my mind of, like, how do I address this?
Right.
And this friend just called it out. He's like, "Oh, it's a thing. It sounds like you're
You have traveler's guilt. Yeah.
You've got this." And it's like, he's like, the best thing you can do is to live to your fullest, even when you're here, and maybe it will be inspiring to some folks.
That's so true, and that's what I found too. By, like, last weekend was the festival here, Loy Krathong, that had beautiful floats and lanterns, and I took videos of that and pictures, and I was reluctant to post those, but the response I got was amazing. People loved being able to see distractions from the campaign, from hearing about death and dying and diseases and the economy. And so I think people appreciate seeing beauty wherever it comes from. And it's not like I'm trying to flaunt it in their faces saying, haha, I got to do this, because they know it's been a challenge for me as well, that I've wanted to go back home in many ways. And so I feel like there's the opportunity for us to be showing people what else is out there in life that they can eventually do someday and aspire to. And so, like you said, living our fullest right now is not taking away from, we cannot get sick enough to make somebody else healthy right now.
Yeah.
And we can't be poor enough to make so many people wealthy. We have to live with the resources we have and the opportunities we've been given to the fullest, knowing that we can't just play this victim role and feel like that's going to benefit others.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's spot on. I really like how you put it, and it's reassuring, honestly. Like it's good to run into other people that have gone through that, and then see how they've dealt with it and how they think of it as well.
Yeah, because our heart does go out to, there's compassion there for
Absolutely.
Everybody going through what they're going through. And at the same time, somebody has to be here to help pull people up from whatever anguish or depression they're going through.
Yeah.
And I know that when people ask me to, we don't call it prayer, we call it spiritual mind treatment, which is focusing on what they want to have happen in life. And if I'm really in a depressed state, I can't see beyond their issues. I need to be able to see beyond that to where they want things to be in order to help them get there. And I do believe in the focused power of our thoughts and energy to get us to where we want to be. And I know that I love what quantum physics is pointing out now too, through quantum entanglement. We don't have to be right next to somebody to have a positive impact on their lives. Mm-hmm. So just through that whole idea of quantum entanglement, we can positively impact others' lives with our thoughts and beliefs from afar.
Interesting. Yeah, I've been wanting to kind of revisit some of these topics in quantum mechanics and quantum physics. So I think you're right. I think in my mind I see it converging with at least some of the spirituality that I've been studying and reading about, and I'm super excited for that.
Great.
Yeah.
And bring your questions too, because that's the way you expand the explanations people are giving too. If you don't bring those critical questions like, what about this and what about that, and to try and make it easier to communicate that to others.
I think you're right. I think having an inquisitive or curious mind can serve one quite well.
Yes.
In these types of endeavors.
Yes. And in all of life, just being curious is what I think brought us onto the plane to get us out of to begin the journey, because we were curious. I just knew that.
Was that plane? What type of plane are you talking about there?
Oh, good one. Yes.
Works both ways, right?
Yes.
Got us on the plane.
Planes of consciousness, as well as those
physical plane things that we debatably should be using less these days.
Exactly.
But they do bring us to magical places.
Mm-hmm. And until, as I said, I can swim across the Atlantic, I get seasick, so I pick my torture. But I love trains as well. And so getting us to that curious state where we are less in fear of our lives and more curious about what life has to offer than afraid of letting go. Did you ever read the book Illusions?
I'm not.
Oh.
Who's it by? If you know.
Yes. Oh my God, he wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull, Richard Bach.
Oh, nice.
I believe I forgot that. Anyway, Illusions is a wonderful story, but it has a little story in the beginning about these sea creatures all terrified to let go of the bottom of the river. Have you heard the story? And they're clinging to the rocks because they feel like they're going to get battered, and so they're afraid to let go of the riverbed. but they're still getting beaten around and knocked around. And finally, one's curious, and he says, I wonder what it would be like if I let go of the bottom of the riverbed. And he lets go, and he rises up and starts floating on the top. And even I think he gets wings or something too, and he's circling back down, and everybody says, look at the Savior. He's going to come back and rescue us all. And the sea creature up on the top of the water is just saying, no, just let go.
Just let go. I love that. I love the idea of untethering in general.
Oh, yes.
As you might be able to tell.
Yeah. Goes back to it. Untether from the rocks.
Letting go, right?
Yes.
What is it? How do we get ourselves to take that plunge and let go? Whatever that is in our lives. Because it's different for everybody, right?
I had a house. I sold all my belongings, except for a few that my dear friend is storing for me. Thank you very much, Bill. And just the whole idea of letting go of material belongings, because you realize that where you can get by letting go is far greater than by hanging on to them. And so
that's very powerful.
Letting go of all the as you said, the illusion of security that they bring. And so what did you two have to let go of to begin your journey?
We let go of our jobs, our careers were kind of put on pause. We rented out, our apartment, put stuff in a storage. Thank you to all the friends that are holding various belongings for us, and got a little storage bin. And we didn't know. We figured we'd be gone 4 to 8 months, and it's this process. But it takes months to get all those arrangements in place and to say goodbye to people and get yourself to take the plunge. I still remember the day I went to the airport. We're like, we're doing this.
Yeah, it can be kind of scary.
And it's harder as you get older, and as you're clinging on. People tend to cling on more as they get older, and then even with families. But it's obviously harder with families, but it's doable. Like, we've met people even with families that have been traveling around, and you're like, like, where there's a will, there's a way.
Right, definitely. So you just have to decide that whatever fears you have are far outweighed by the benefits of, once again, trusting the universe that things are going to work out, and also not caring what happens. And what's that other than saying, well, nothing is either good or bad, but our thinking makes it so, but it also, nothing really matters. And I've noticed that when I'm not attached to
thank you so much.
things being a certain outcome, then I'm much more open to it all, and not being attached to how it has to look.
And also, like, not sliding into nihilism, right? Because I think a lot of people see this idea of, like, not being attached to things or not contending as, like you said, like, nothing really matters. A lot of people in my experience, when they hear that, or some people in my experience, when they hear that, they jump to, like, well, then what's the point? And I see that, but I think that's part of the path. It's like, how do you still find purpose and meaning and motivation, like, even with digesting these truths or these possible truths?
Well, because I think it's individual for every person, of course. I have my own, as I said, inner guidance system that I listen to, and so maybe saying nothing matters is too extreme, because things do matter. But once again,
sorry, I didn't mean to misquote you.
No, it's okay.
It was more like
I did state that, so you didn't misquote me. But it's not like I don't care.
Yeah.
But I live out of my own internal ethics that say I always want to be kind to people. I want to be in integrity, be authentic. And so there are certain truths that I bring with me on my journey, but I'm also, once again, not attached to how things have to necessarily look in terms of the physical setting. And I have my intentions. I definitely have preferences, but I can also let go if it doesn't show up like that. Like life has been, not exactly showing up exactly how I had thought things were a year ago.
Yep.
And so coming from a place that's still based in caring, compassion, and integrity, but also letting go of how it has to ultimately look on a material level. It's, I guess, a little clearer.
I like that, yeah. And in my mind, taking this idea of detaching another level for me has been thinking more about death.
Yeah.
And it's this idea, like you were saying, like going back to the story of the creatures letting go of the thing at the bottom of the ocean and just trusting. There's this idea that like the moment you can accept like your mortality fully and accept death, that's supposed to be like, they say that's a game-changing moment in life as well.
Totally. In fact, they say, remember that the other night we were talking about how the death of the caterpillar is the birth of the butterfly. And
those metaphors are beautiful.
I know, and I've lived my life by that. I mean, especially when you face death. I was diagnosed with breast cancer 10 years ago, and that was when I did my first long journey because I thought I could die. And so everything's facing that death. It was like, well, what do I want to do before I die if I only have a limited amount of time? How do I want to spend it? And so that's when I got really deliberate and quit a job that I wasn't happy in, got out of a relationship that I wasn't happy in, and I took off. And I realized that I needed to live deliberately. And because of that permission almost of saying, okay, what if this is the last few years of my life? How do I want to spend it? And because of that, I think living truly out of my passion. I mean, I haven't just been on vacation. I've been working very hard in many ways, but doing what brings me joy is what propelled me to be able to, I think, stay healthy as well, because I think the cells in our bodies pick up on our stress and our feelings and
the mind-body connection.
Oh yeah, it's huge.
I mean, there's still so much that we need to research and understand, but I think it seems to me like there's at least something there. And just in my own experience, you know? Yeah.
And to, as you said in the beginning, to face mortality and realize, okay, what do you want to do with this wonderful, precious life that you have, and how do you want to spend it? And then not being afraid. And I've watched a lot of life after death movies or reports of stories with people who have had near-death experiences. And those have been really inspiring because hearing that people don't want to come back from having whatever NDE they're on, like, really, I got to go back into this body? And I realized, well, either way, both options are good. You know, if I come back or I move on. And so it's taken a lot of the fear out of death for me by hearing these accounts of people who've been brought back. And I realized there's nothing to fear. It's one of those things that are built up as this heffalump in life. It's from the Tao of Pooh. You have to look up heffalumps. That big thing that we're afraid of, but nobody can find it or see it, but they are all afraid of it. And so...
That's a great concept.
Yeah. Just in terms of...
What is the heffalump?
Heffalump of your life.
In your life.
So,
I like that idea a lot. Go ahead.
Have you seen any of the near-death experience stories?
I've only heard some. Very few. I want to look into this more. I've been starting to think and research more and just approach these things with like an open mind and like channeling my curiosity into these areas and exploring. Yeah. And this is definitely a big one.
Okay.
Do you want to share your opinion or thoughts on what you think happens after one dies?
Sure. I mean, obviously...
With the caveat of
don't know.
with all of the caveats.
Yeah, it's like, I'll get back to you on that after, if I can come back from wherever I am. But, well, I think like so many, I mean, they've done more and more studies on this now that people have been coming out more, sharing their experiences, knowing that they're not going to be labeled as a total freak because so many people have had these. And so I think we must all go through something similar of going toward this light and experiencing an incredible amount of love is what I've been reading that people experience. I mean, a deep soul level acceptance that people initially experience. And then I'll just share what I would like to have happen. Obviously without being able to prove anything, but I think there is some evidence about reincarnation. I think that I like to think that we get more than just one chance at being human, because it's such a complex thing. And what happens to babies who die? Was that really their only opportunity to be human in that short period? But I do think that overall we're souls that are connected. And so I like to think that we kind of make agreements with who we're going to have an experience with on our next lifetime, or in whatever human form we're going through. So we come to grow and learn and expand together, and we sometimes come into agreements in non-physical form of what we're going to develop or expand into, because it's not all about just working and solving things. It's about expanding and evolving.
I really like that. I really like how you articulate it, and I can tell you've thought about this and you've explored these thoughts.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a little bit in the last
just a
10
little
years,
while,
yeah. Yeah, and so I think, but ultimately being open-minded. I don't believe that there's a God that we are going to go in front of that's going to bring out a long list like Santa and check things off whether we've done things right, and I don't believe in a devil down below that is also going to suck us into this hell for eternity. And I just believe that there's a loving presence in everything, and that's what I call God, is this loving energy that wants to expand through us. So
that's beautiful.
We would have, of course, more opportunities to improve upon what maybe wasn't that we failed, but that we weren't quite as skilled at in one lifetime, and we want to develop those skills a little bit more. And so
absolutely,
I just feel grateful for the life that I've had, though, and feel like, okay, whatever I did before, maybe it wasn't so bad, because this time around it's been pretty good. And not that I believe that there's karma and we have to go and necessarily work through all that, but I think that we do come from a platform that we've created before, and we get to launch off from there.
Interesting. So. Thank you so much for sharing all this stuff. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you. I did too.
Are there any parting thoughts or other things you wanted to talk about or share with folks?
No, I just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing and creating this experience, because I know that I think it makes people think deeply about their life, and so I applaud you for pursuing what you are doing. And
thank you so much.
And also for anybody who's listening, to truly not live in fear, to step out there and know that I feel like once I make up my mind to do something, the whole universe aligns itself to allow that to happen. It's kind of like that Indiana Jones movie. Remember how he was in that huge dark abyss, and it wasn't until he stepped out into the unknown that the platform rose up to greet him. And that's a little bit how I felt like my life has been. When I step out and trust, something rises up to greet me. It's usually pretty good.
It's a great metaphor.
So anyway.
I think that's a great note to leave folks on. Like, what is the fear? Identifying what the fear in our lives are, and stepping away from them, or realizing, or honestly not stepping away, confronting them.
Yeah.
Or like what that means to folks.
Right. Working through the fear so you can get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
And knowing that the fear is ultimately, fear in my mind stands for false evidence appearing real. It's the acronym I've created.
I like that.
So
false evidence appearing real. Yes. I like that.
And so when you realize that a lot of fear is just mental thoughts that we've made up about things, it disarms the energy around fear. And I feel like it becomes just a silly, some of my biggest fears have been reduced to little tiny bugs, or just little things that I realized had no merit in taking up that much space in my head.
Yeah, the hindsight 2020, they like look like little specks in the rearview mirror,
Yeah.
but when you're in that moment, it seems like the most daunting thing.
Yeah. Interesting that you say hindsight 2020 now, because that's what we're all going through with the hindsight of 2020.
I didn't even make that connection until now. Maybe there's something there.
Yeah, but we have
Anyway.
2020 vision to now see where we want to go, right?
There you go. I like that too. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me on
And
this.
we'll include some links so that any links that you want to share, people can find you and the
Okay.
other places in the internet that you may be on. I was just part of your amazing video of your vlog as well. So we can send folks over that way if they want to check out. Her videos are a lot shorter.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
2 to 5 minutes. You can get through it.
You might be inspiring me with the format.
Okay, well.
But thank you again so much. It
No,
means a lot
thank
to me.
you. I so appreciate it. Thank you.
Kapun ka.
Thank you for listening.
And thank you as well.